Hello everyone, my name is Michelle, and I can boast of the thinnest waist in the world. Well, okay, if not the most, but definitely one of them. Now you will hear for yourself how it happened. Keep listening and watching, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. I am also waiting for your comments under the video. I grew up as an ordinary girl, a little plump for my height and age. In principle, everything was fine with me, until one of my classmates insulted me. I was about 12 years old at the time, and I remember him coming up to me and saying something like, "Hey, fat girl, step aside." I was so upset. It was a blow because I had never thought about my figure before, much less thought that I was fat. It was even more insulting to hear him say it, because I liked him. By the way, yes, this is how my poor, fragile heart broke. From that very moment, I set myself to improve, to work on myself. In an interesting magazine, I saw a photo shoot of models. They advertised underwear, and I liked one beautiful corset. It looked delicious. Black fabric with a little ruffle, ribbon bows, everything looked so expensive and elegant. I wanted to wear something like this. I saved up my money and bought something like this. Mine, of course, was 10 times cheaper, but it was also black. I ran home and tried to put it on. To be honest, it wasn't the first time I did it, and when I did, I couldn't breathe. It seemed to me that all my internal organs were lifted up and someone was squeezing my stomach hard from behind. I've never experienced such discomfort before. I also couldn't hunch over like I usually did. The corset held my posture. This was also a huge plus for it. But I wanted to take it off. I was dying of pain in my back and stomach. I couldn't even eat properly because of the inconvenience, but I wasn't going to give up. I wore the corset everywhere, not taking it off even at night, and kept to a diet, refused sweets or gluten. With each passing week, the discomfort became less and less. I took off the corset only to wash it, that is for 20 minutes a day, and then put it back on again. My back straightened, the pain decreased, and everywhere, I felt light and healthy. So it took a couple of months, and then I was surprised to notice that I had lost weight. The corset was a little loose in the abdominal area, and that was my victory. What did I do next? I went and bought another corset, a little narrower, firmer, more beautiful. I did not spare the money when I saw that they work. My goal was now not just to lose weight, but to have the thinnest waist in the class. By the way, there was another girl in my class whose name was Lauret. She was the thinnest in the class, and her belly was about 55 centimeters at the waist, and I planned to beat her figure, to reduce to 50 centimeters. I knew it would be difficult, and I would probably have to pull the corset down again, but I wanted so badly to rub that goat's nose, so that he would once and for all remember me as the slimmest girl in the class. Well, it was said and done. Every month, I tightened the corset by 3 to 4 centimeters, and after about a year, my waist became straight aspen. I remember standing in front of the mirror, taking a measuring tape and wrapping it around my waist, and there was the cherished 50 centimeters. I did it! I became the thinnest girl in my class. During this time, I had changed corsets about 8 times. I continued to diet, to stretch more, and after the holidays, I came to school in a new dress with my favorite corset underneath. Everyone looked at me in surprise, and I was so pleased with myself. I walked up with my slender figure to the classmate who insulted me by calling me fat once, and smiled at him. He stood there in a daze for a while, and then he said that I was no longer fat, I was now sick in the head. Can you imagine? I could have bitten him for saying that. He enraged me. All the pain, torment, and dieting spilled out at that moment in a great aggression. I attacked him like a wild cat, scratched his face, kicked him in the knees and ribs, pulled out the hair on his head like petals from a daisy. And I shouted loudly. I don't remember what, maybe even cursed. The teacher stopped me. She grabbed me and led me to the principal's office. There I told him everything as it was. All the revelations came out of me, along with tears. The principal listened to me for a long time, and then called the boy to her office. His name was Austin. He came in, sidestepping me a little, sat down cautiously in the chair next to me, and asked what they wanted from him. The director said that he was not behaving like a real man, then explained that he had no right to insult me and call me names, especially after I had done so much work on myself. Her actions deserve respect, and what else can you show us besides insults? The principal asked. But Austin stared sadly at the floor, said nothing at first, and then turned to me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I didn't want to forgive him, but I knew I had to put an end to it. I told him to get lost, and then I got up and went to class. About 6 days passed since that day. Austin came up to me again, and he asked me where I lived, and I was surprised, but he said he wanted to apologize properly. In general, in the evening, I was waiting for a basket with flowers and fruit, and inside it was a nice note like, "Sorry again." It was a beautiful gesture, but it wasn't enough. The next day at school, he came up to me and asked me to go to the movies, and I thought, why not? After all, he might be making amends like this. I went to a movie with him, then to a cafe, and we walked home. To be honest, I was still mad at Austin, but at the same time, something else was beginning to stir inside, but it wasn't anger. Not at all. At school, Austin would offer to carry my bag, sit next to me at lunch. Sometimes we would even walk home together after class, and he would still come in the evenings. And when we were friends, on one of the walks, I told him that we should stop. Stop what? What is it? He asked me. I'm not mad at you anymore. You don't have to arrange walks, movies, coffees. I'm not mad anymore. You're a good guy, I said. Austin stiffened visibly. He stopped, stood in front of me, and said he didn't do it for that at all. Then for what? I asked, and he kissed me. At first, I was very surprised. I wanted to push him away, hit him. But then I realized that I also somehow wanted this. After a couple of minutes, he apologized for calling me names again. I always liked you, in any way with any parameters, and I do not know why I hurt you then, but I did not want to hurt you. And then when I saw you different, transformed, I was even more confused, he said. He kept saying something, but I still couldn't believe what he was saying at all. Wait, what? So you liked me and that's why you said something nasty? I asked. He looked down at the floor again and nodded. At first, I was very angry again, and then I thought about it and realized that it was really only because of that situation that I saw myself on the other side, stronger in spirit, body, and mind. I proved to myself that I can work on myself in spite of ridicule, talk, or rumors. I did not care at all what they say. I aimed for my goal and got it, and it proved to me what I can do. So what happened next to us? Austin and I started dating. He signed up for a gym to work up his abs. Don't think I put him up to it. He himself decided that for a girl with a perfect figure, then he should be a guy like that. I, by the way, also signed up for sports. I'm on the right diet and have already taken off my corset. I don't need it now. It turns out that I can adjust my figure without it. I continue to feel great, love my body and myself, and I noticed that people around me began to treat me in the same way. People feel your confidence and reach out to the strong. So I advise you, before you start working on your body, first work on your inner state, and specifically on your thoughts and attitude towards yourself. Then and only then, the right people will reach out to you and you will have a healthy mind, body, brain, and everything else. Well, you get it. Now tell me, are you satisfied with yourself? What would you like to change and why? Hello everyone, my name is Lena. I know. Now you will hear the story of my weight loss and may even be jealous in some ways. But I will tell you honestly, miracles happen and I am an example of that. And the miracle was laid out inside me from the beginning, and it helped me to lose 90 kilograms without dieting. Now I will tell you everything in more detail, and you write your comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and watch further. Tell me, friend, have you ever seen a child who weighs under 100 kilograms at the age of 9? Can this be happening? Yes, it can. From the very beginning, when I was born, I lived with my parents. Like all dads and mothers, they limited my daily diet to sweets, junk food, flour products. They carefully monitored my diet and tried to eat right themselves. There were a lot of things I didn't like to eat, including nasty broccoli, but there was no way out. And then my parents were forced to leave for work in another country. As you can imagine, they could not take me with them because I was too young. There was definitely no one there to look after me, so I was left in the care of my grandmother. My grandmother was kind. She loved her only granddaughter, but even more, she loved to watch her eat. For her, it was like a trigger. Then her nerves instantly calmed down. The day I moved in with her was a turning point in my life. From the very early morning, my grandmother rustled in the kitchen. She was always preparing something for me to eat. For breakfast, I was already waiting for soup, cutlets, and a pie for tea. She would not let me leave the table until I had eaten every last crumb, and it was the same for tea, lunch, and dinner. And then after dinner, we would drink tea with something sweet. So imperceptibly, a month passed. Then 6 months, 2, 3, my parents could not come in anyway. We just talked to them on the phone, and that's it. I understood that they had a job there. They were trying to earn money. Even so, I missed them. But it was nice to be with my grandmother, too. My grandmother had a lot of funny neighbors nearby. There were a lot of kids with whom I played every now and then. We especially liked to catch up with each other. The game of tag was very energizing. But it was in that year, when I ran only 5 meters and realized that I was terribly sweaty, tired, and could not catch my breath, that something happened in my body. I went into my room, took out my jeans, and realized that I couldn't fit into them. And not only them, my t-shirts, dresses, everything became too small. I started crying, and my grandmother said it wasn't me, it was the clothes. "Sit down, I'll sew them for you." And she made them bigger. Then I clearly saw with horror how big I had become. 6 months later, my mother arrived. When I opened the door, she said, "Excuse me, does Mrs. Harris live here?" And I said, "Mom, don't you recognize me?" Because of the extra weight, it was difficult for me to show any emotions. I just waved my hand and my mother fainted. When she woke up, the first thing she said was, "Mom, what did you do to her?" My grandmother was indignant that she took good care of me and scolded my mother for not liking something. "You disappeared with your husband for several years, and then you show me that I did not look after the child well?" In general, it was a long quarrel. The meeting turned out to be quite different from what I had imagined. I thought it would be joyful, but it turned out to be different. My mother packed my things and took me home. She said that my father would not be coming soon, but that she would stay with me for the time being. First of all, my mother put me on a diet. Again, broccoli, lots of water, and other vegetables. And I was already so used to unhealthy, fatty foods that the vegetables seemed tasteless. And you know what the most offensive thing is? I sat on such a diet for 3 months and gained even more weight. Then I changed diets and gained another 10 kilograms on top. My eyes were no longer visible, but instead there were 2 thin stripes. It was terrible. I didn't even really eat anything, but I was getting bigger and bigger. Eventually, it got to the point where I was wearing my mother's clothes, and they were even too small for me in some places. I knew my body looked creepy, but what else could I do? I tried and did, and it just got worse. I'm not talking about the tantrums, the tears, and the stress I was going through. Every morning, I woke up, silently cursing everything in the world. And the more time passed, the more weight I gained, and the more exhausting my mother's diets became. It got to the point where I was almost sitting just drinking water. Can you imagine? In general, then my mother took me to the gym, but even there I was refused. They demanded that my mother give me a full medical examination because they had never seen a girl my age so fat. They probably thought I was sick or something and were afraid to take the risk. What if she died while training? Then my mother took me to a nutritionist. She was a very calm, kind woman. She looked at me as if she didn't see anything surprising. She said that everything would be fine and asked me to come closer. I closed my eyes and she slowly examined me all over and then asked me to sit down while she studied the tests. The nutritionist asked my mother a lot of questions about me, how we lived, what I ate, what music I listened to, and so on. My mother was even outraged. Why the stupid questions? To which the doctor replied that I put on weight because of my mother's lack of attention and closeness, not because of my grandmother's food. "What?" she asked. She could not believe what she had heard, and the doctor explained that when she left me, I became very worried, although I did not fully realize it myself. My body was under constant stress, thought there was a danger, and turned any food I ate into calories. Then my mom came and put me on a diet, and my body took it as a double dose of stress. "All you need to do is give your child love and care and be there for them," the doctor said. My mother was dumbfounded, and we left the hospital in confusion. That same day, Mom made steaks, and for the first time in years, we sat and talked and laughed. After 8 months, we came back to my grandmother's. I knocked, and she opened the door and asked, "What do you want?" She didn't recognize me, and all because I managed to lose 90 kilograms. Can you imagine? We came to her with an apology. My mother wanted to talk to her and ask for her forgiveness. Now I became slim while eating everything in a row and did not exercise. That's what a simple mother's love can do. Hi everyone, my name is Annie, and I have a twin sister, Annie. Have you ever seen twins? More often than not, they are similar to each other, and they are confused, but with my sister Annie, everything is different. We are not that similar to each other, and we are actually completely different. Now you will understand why. While you sit down, watch, do not forget to like the video, write comments under the video, and subscribe to the channel. We were born, and it became a big holiday for the family. Dad and Mom were looking forward to their 2 daughters. We were given names and we grew up. My mother told me that as a child, she always tried to buy us the same clothes, to pay the same attention to each of us. While we were young, there really was no difference. The changes began in the transition age. That's when the differences and conflicts between Annie and me began. I always noticed that she didn't like me. Annie took most of the sweets, toys, and if she liked my toy more, although we were given the same thing, she broke mine. She is 10 minutes younger than me and always reproached me with this. I often complained to my mother about my sister, but my mother only asked me not to swear, and that was all. The worst thing was at night, we were put to sleep in the same room, and every night Annie scared me, threw toys at my face, slammed the window sharply, once even cut off my hair. But the most interesting thing is that she managed to get out of most of it, almost always. My childhood fears and complexes developed thanks to my sister. The stories about the friendly sisters seemed fabulous. And then we grew up, and my sister's hatred grew stronger. At school, I did well. I was an excellent student, won competitions and Olympiads, which cannot be said about my sister. For some reason, she was a terrible student, and I always did her homework for her. The teacher set us down separately so as not to confuse us, and my sister often pretended to be me in order to get a good grade for her homework. But over time, the teacher learned to distinguish between my handwriting and Annie's manners. When we were 14 years old, I began to gain weight noticeably, which cannot be said about my sister. I don't know why it happened, but I was very worried about it. The only way out was to eat stress food, and so I did every day. After a couple of years, I was already too fat, so much so that I wore the same clothes every day. The other clothes didn't suit me stupidly. Annie rejoiced in my disappointments and tears. She often bought me dresses, pants, and blouses to spite me, and tried them on in front of me, and I looked enviously at her flat stomach. I threw all my strength into my studies, so I was a completely excellent student, and Annie was a beautiful 2-year student. Every day I woke up with a feeling of disgust. I was disgusted to see myself in the mirror, to wear the same thing, and yet there was no support from the outside. While I was buried in textbooks, eating in front of books, my sister was building a life, making friends, and even managed to have some kind of relationship with a guy. I saw her from the window when he brought her home. Annie went into her room, took off her raincoat, and began to talk about what a good time she had. She spoke with a special sense of pleasure about things or people that I didn't have. In the summer, after the end of the school year, I decided to go to the gym. Those were the hardest months of my life. Only those who have lost weight will truly understand how difficult it is to work on your body, how difficult it is to be on a diet, not allowing yourself to eat anything you want as you did before. I cried in the hall. I wanted to give up 1,000,000 times, to leave. I was angry at myself, at my nature, and even at my mother. Why did you give birth to me like this? But my mother always said that she did not give birth to me like this, that I was the same as Annie, but then I began to eat. I would come home tired and out of sorts, and my sister would go on living the life that I could have had. In return for the failures in sports, I made up for it with my brain. I was able to find interesting intellectual quizzes in which I participated and won money. They might be small, but they were enough to pay for the gym and buy separate diet food. I went there all summer without missing a single training session. And you know what the most offensive thing was? I did not lose weight by a gram, not by a centimeter. It was just awful. I came home and sat in the corner of my room and cried my eyes out. It seemed to me that the universe itself was against me living happily. In response to my tears, Annie just smiled. She was acting really weird that night. At first, she laughed hysterically, and then she went into the kitchen and drank a martini. My parents were not at home at the time, and it was the first time I saw my sister drinking alcohol. I calmed down. Her behavior was frightening. "Are you drinking?" I asked her, but she could barely speak, and then she would cry. "That's how it happens. I have a perfect figure and he still left me. What else did he need?" she said and wept bitterly. At this moment, I wanted to comfort her. Despite our complicated relationship, I still loved her. When I hugged her, Annie started laughing hysterically. "You? Are you comforting me? I'm the one who should be comforting you. I don't need your support. It's easy for you to do it. You've always been better than me at everything. Our parents love you more just because you're smarter. You study well. Every now and then, they give me you as an example." I was taken aback, asked what she was saying, but Annie was furious. "What? Surprised? What else was I supposed to do? I couldn't let you be more beautiful than me," she screamed. Then my hands began to shake, and I didn't know what it all meant. From the drunken delirium, I was able to make out that my sister gave me some supplements every day to make me fat. She did it every day, and finally, they worked. That's why sports and diets didn't help me. "I ruined your life, but it didn't make mine any better," my sister said again and burst into tears. At that moment, I wanted to hit her, curse her, and in general, I didn't want to see her again. I went to my room and didn't speak to my sister for 2 weeks. She didn't say anything at first, but then she started apologizing, but I was too angry. Then my sister told my mother about everything, for which she received a lot of punishment. Well, then I was taken to the hospital, where I underwent a course of treatment purification from drugs. 6 months have passed since then. I lost a lot of weight, but not completely. There's still a little left. On our birthday, she asked me to forgive her 100 times, and then she made a speech. She said that she didn't deserve a sister like me, that envy blinded her and she almost killed her twin. Annie cried bitterly, and in the end, I forgave her. Since then, our relationship has improved. Annie now helps me dress stylishly, introduces me to friends, and takes me everywhere with her. Would you forgive her if you were in my place? Hello, everyone. My name is Angela. I want to share with you my incredible story about how I met an amazing guy despite being overweight, large hips, and a protruding stomach. Yes, it happens. It helped me not only to believe in myself, but also gave me a huge motivation to lose weight. My life has changed for the better, and I can't wait to share it with you. Well, you in turn, write an opinion in the comments, like the video, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel. In general, I was born a rather thin child. Everyone told me in my childhood that I was very thin. My mother was worried that I was not eating, but my grandmother had the biggest tantrum. As you know, grandmothers are simply obsessed with making their grandchildren eat with a bang. That's how it was with me. I grew up and the pounds went into growth, but not in the sides. Personally, I did not care about the weight. I began to worry a few years later, and the reason for this was my move to my grandmother. Yes, as you may have guessed, I lived with her and I got fat sideways. Or rather, I almost stopped fitting in doorways because of the fat on my stomach. How did it come to this? Very simple. By the way, I moved to her because my parents went abroad to work. They couldn't take me with them, so they decided to leave me with Grandma for a while. I didn't mind because I loved the old lady so much. Even though she tried to feed me forever, otherwise she was super kind. So I packed up and my parents took me to her place. We said goodbye and they left for a year. My school was not far from my grandmother's house, so it was only about 5 minutes to walk. In the morning when I woke up, my grandmother was already on her feet and was making hard-boiled pancakes, donuts, and omelets. She would serve me a whole plate and I had to eat it all. Otherwise, she would threaten that I would not go to school. For lunch, my grandmother usually wrapped me chicken or turkey with a salad and side dish, plus some fruit for dessert. It was a full meal. After lunch, when I came home from school, Grandma would make a casserole or pasta or something, and I sat with her alone and had dinner. The workload at school increased, so I had absolutely no time for walks with friends. After school, I did my homework until the evening, and then we sat down to eat until after lights out. In this mode, we lived for a whole year, and without noticing it, I began to gain extra pounds. Yes, at first I didn't notice how my cheeks were rounded, my stomach appeared. I noticed this only closer to the summer, when it was time for light t-shirts and thin jeans. Imagine! I took out last year's summer clothes and realized that I did not fit into them. With horror in my eyes, I walked over to the mirror and stared at my thighs, where my jeans were stuck, and my breasts, which just wanted to tear my t-shirt. I took off my clothes and began to look at the reflection, and it seemed to me that there was another person standing there. Really, for a year, my body had changed so much, and then I started to analyze my entire lifestyle recently and was upset. My grandmother immediately ran into the room, and I accused her for being like this. She was confused, and I began to eat even more from resentment and depression. I didn't need to be told to finish my meal, because I had turned into a locust and was eating everything that was edible. My figure became even wider, and it was a vicious circle. In the end, everything affected my self-esteem, and since we became more mature, the guys already arranged interesting parties to which I was invited. I went, but no one met me from the guys. My girlfriends comforted me, and I continued to eat. So another 6 months passed. My parents stayed late, and I ate and ate. So it was until one day when I was sitting in a cafe with friends, and a guy came up to us. His name was Derek. He sat down next to us and spoke. I thought he was hitting on my girlfriend, but to the surprise of everyone, including me, he asked my name. Incredulously, I met him. It seemed to me that he was playing a joke or wants to crack. I felt a growing sense of hunger inside me. It happened whenever I was nervous. In general, it did not take long, and we began to date. Yes, he was the bomb. Derek is a handsome guy with a toned body. He accepted me for who I am and did not even try to make adjustments to my appearance. Not only was I shocked, but so were my friends. Everyone looked at our relationship as a comedy. Someone assumed that I was rich and buying it, but this was not true. Derek always said I was beautiful, and his words really made me think that I was no worse than anyone else. So I began to develop a sense of confidence. I realized that Derek had genuine feelings for me, and I decided to trust him. He never said hurtful words to me, did not reproach me for being overweight, often bought goodies and found time to listen. I didn't know what kind of actions I'd met him for, but I was happy to have him. Once I went with him to the wedding of his friend, and there was a great photo shoot. I was wearing a pink floor-length dress, had my hair done up nicely, and I felt great. The evening was not without gossip about our relationship, but I tried to ignore it, as did Derek himself. We just enjoyed each other. So it was until I received photos from the event. There was a super photographer who is famous for his work all over the country. I would have liked to invite him to my house or hire him for a photo shoot, but his work was sky high. So here's what I'm getting at. Despite the fact that his work is gorgeous and does not require any criticism, when I saw our photos, I was horrified. In the photos, I looked like a pig. And yes, I'm not exaggerating. I was in shock and I just wanted to cry and cry. In my pink dress, instead of looking like a goddess, I actually looked like a pig. Derek reassured me, but at that moment I made an important decision: to radically change and work hard on myself. The very next day, I signed up to work out at the gym without telling anyone. I picked up a diet and I pulled myself together. And you know what? It's never been so hard for me. Each training session was harder than the last, my body ached, and I was terribly hungry. I wanted to give up every time, but I forced myself to get up and go to training. I didn't want to change my body for anyone, not even Derek. I wanted to do it for myself, and through tears and a sincere, I don't want to. I forced myself to go to the gym, and yes, I managed. I managed to do it every time. After 2 months, I realized that I could already go to the gym with ease, ate diet food, ate right, and I already even liked it. Derek was the first to notice the change. A month later, he asked me why I lost weight, and he was right. I lost 8 kilos in 1 month, another 5 in the second, and another 3 in the next 3 months, for a total of 22 kilograms. I could see the progress immediately, and I couldn't get enough of my new body and spirit. Yes, I realized that I had also strengthened morally, and I was glad of it. Derek was always worried about me, and then he started going to the gym with me. We began to work out side by side, and it became even more pleasant to go to training. My coach praised me, but at the same time was strict. I did not relax. Well, I did not allow myself this luxury. After a year, I was completely unrecognizable, and Derek and I were such a beautiful couple. We were envied by old friends, and the new ones had no idea what I was like before. You know, I was proud to show a photo and tell a story about motivation and self-improvement. I am sure that a good example is contagious, and I hope that other girls who have problems with excess weight will support me, make the right choice, and start working on themselves too. Everyone knows that this is the hardest job. In general, guys, write your opinion in the comments, and I'm waiting for your likes. Hi everyone, my name is Milena. I had problems with being overweight, and because of this, I grew up with a lot of complexes. Only those who have the same problems will understand what I went through. And you know what? I managed to win, not only the weight, but also myself. And how? I'll tell you now. You will be surprised, but I was not born at all plump. On the contrary, I was a very small baby. My parents were not inclined to fatness. Everyone always envied them, my dad and my mom. Nature rewarded them with growth, gorgeous physique, and I myself envied them, to be honest. Friends prophesied to my parents of beautiful, slim, and strong offspring. They were not mistaken about the strength. At first, everyone said that this little girl would grow up to be the prettiest in the world. Well, yes, at first I was. When I was growing up, I was really cute and pretty, so it seemed to everyone except myself. Eventually, as time passed, I went to school. In the 8th grade, I began to grow dramatically in height. I was tall and thin. I had no butt or chest. A year later, the absence of 2 important parts of the body began to develop complexes in me. They called me the mop, which added fuel to the fire. I stopped communicating with the girls, withdrew into myself, cried every night, and wore the same clothes, a wide sweatshirt and jeans. Every time I came to school, I wanted to hide so that no one would notice me. I often pulled my hood over my head, and I got into the habit of hunching over. All I wanted was for the day to end quickly. I ran home, ate quickly, and locked myself in my room. I didn't want to talk to my parents. I found an excuse that I was terribly tired, and I lay in bed under the covers and cried sometimes until morning. I knew that this world was too harsh, and I might not be ready for this kind of challenge. And then, sitting on the internet, I stumbled on an interesting forum. It was all about flat girls, and it naturally caught my attention. I started poking around, reading every message, review, and photo. Then, as I understood, the girls discussed some foreign drug that helped them gain weight in a short time and build up the ass and chest. I thought, that's what I need. It seemed to me that fate itself gave me this link, to which I moved miraculously. I found my salvation, which was infinitely happy for me. Thus, having found the name, instructions, I decided to order it for myself. Secretly from my mother, having saved up money, I purchased this drug. It was in the form of pills, and it was like magic. You drink them and you get an appetite. Due to this, a person quickly gains weight. But I had no idea at the time that you also need to gain weight by following some rules. However, I reached my goal pretty quickly. Within a couple of months, I looked really different. But the horror that happened to me. I ate 8 to 9 times a day, and in between a heavy meal, I carried snacks. That is, chips, cookies, my favorite cakes, sweets, chocolate, and so on. After 2 months, I was able to completely update my wardrobe because, as I wanted, I had a chest, a butt, and a little belly. But it was not terrible for me because I was no longer flat. I grew my hair, changed my hair color to a lighter color, and changed my style of clothing. Now I boldly bought skirts, dresses, and tight jeans with t-shirts. Well, I was happy to see myself different. As soon as I worked a little, my life began to play with new colors. I had friends again, I became more relaxed, confident, sociable, and I knew that now I was sexy. Soon, I even had a boyfriend. And he was a real hunk. I met him at one of the parties with friends. His name was Dave, and he was tall, dark, and had a nice body. He was crazy about my figure, and we fell for each other in just a couple of dates. He was my first love, and I thought I was the happiest person in the world. So we started dating. My parents were just happy to see me happy, and at some point, I decided that I could stop taking these pills, because I was in the body that I wanted and I didn't need them anymore. However, this was not the case. As it turned out, everything has its consequences. Despite the fact that I stopped drinking them, my appetite did not even think to decrease. I was hungry all day and couldn't bear to be hungry. I even had a headache if I didn't eat. The hunger attacks were so strong that I almost attacked people around me with aggression, and I realized that I was becoming like an animal. I felt uneasy, so I decided to eat, but reduce the amount a little. As it turned out, this was also not a good solution. My figure continued to grow. I grew in breadth more and more. Now, not only was I tall, but I was also gaining in breadth and turning into a rock. Do you know what the most annoying thing is? That I couldn't stop in any way, and at a time when I was feeling bad, when I was literally howling with despair, my boyfriend, who swore in love, said that we can't be together anymore because my fat interferes with him. Do you understand that? He said my fat was preventing him from hugging me. These words put me in a hysterical state. I ran home, locked myself in the room again, and began to cry. I didn't want to go anywhere but the kitchen. I ate my sadness with food, and it was worse than when I was thin. In short, from extreme to extreme. I put my gym shirt back on and walked around with my head down. Well, then it dawned on me. If there are drugs for fullness, there should be for weight loss. I went back to that forum and found pills with the opposite effect. The effect was instant. I began to lose weight. And how? You may ask, but it's easy. These pills in me killed my appetite, and I ran to the toilet after every meal. So I began to lose weight rapidly. It took me just a couple of months to get back into the shape that Dave loved me in. As soon as I put on my favorite owl skirts, he began to run after me like a tail, telling me about his motivation. Allegedly, he is a good influence on me, and of course, I melted. I couldn't ignore him because I still loved him. But my happiness this time did not last long. Now that I was off those pills, I had another problem. I couldn't stop throwing up. It was like a nightmare. And then I started losing weight, getting flat again. And what do you think? My boyfriend threw me again. This time it was my bones that got in the way. And again, tantrums. I had a shock, and at the same time, I strangely began to hurt from the inside. When I got home after school, my mother met me with a pack of my fatness and thinness pills. We had a serious conversation, and my mother insisted that I be examined at the hospital. But I refused because I was not ill. My struggles were until one day I was unable to get out of bed due to terrible acute abdominal pain. I felt like someone was stabbing me all the time. I lay there and cried. That's when my mother didn't listen and took me to the hospital. Of course, the doctors were shocked when they heard what I had been doing with myself for a whole year. I was getting fat, then losing weight. Yes, it is violence against yourself. Don't you understand that this is fatal? The doctor told me. Wow, I didn't think it was that serious. It turns out that my body experienced terrible shock and stress because of my experiments on myself. I did everything wrong, but my biggest mistake was that I did it all just to please people, and especially a guy who doesn't even appreciate me as a person. That day, my mother cried a lot and told me one thing, that until I accept and respect myself, people around me will mold me into what they want to see, not paying attention to the fact that I am a person. And all this will be my own fault because I allowed such an attitude to myself. In short, after this story, I never buy any pills on questionable sites without my mother's knowledge. And then I had to spend another year on my treatment and recovery. And as for my figure, I still scurried after beauty, only now, thanks to honest work, proper nutrition, and sports, I look good. 2 years later, Dave decided to hit on me again. Only this time, I paid him back by telling him that his lack of brains got in the way of me approaching him. He left, which I'm glad of. I did have another good friend, but that's another story. So, do not be lazy, friends, and work on yourself.